Hello and welcome. My name is Andrew, and in this tutorial I'll explain how the listings are put together using JetEngine and Bricks Builder. As you probably know, a listing allows you to organize data from various website content into a template that later can be presented on different pages and in different layouts. With JetEngine, you can decide which type of data to pull rather than specifying each piece of information individually for every listing, while Bricks Builder enables you to style and position that data visually using dynamic elements. I assume you already have JetEngine and Bricks installed and activated. Go to Bricks settings and make sure the toggles for post, pages, listings and any post types you want to edit with Bricks are enabled. Before we begin, allow me to remind you that your likes, comments and subscriptions greatly help our channel gain online visibility. Now we're ready to build listings with Bricks. On the main dashboard, hover over JetEngine, click on the listing label and hit the Add New Listing item button. A pop-up will appear with the initial settings for the listing, allowing you to choose the type of website content to pull data from, name the listing and select the editor you'll use to build it. The first option in the listing source drop-down is Posts, which has further subcategories of post, pages, media, and custom post types you may have created or that come pre-built with various plugins. The next option is the Query Builder. If you select it, you'll need to specify a previously built query that filters content based on the conditions you set. For example, this allows the listing to pull data from a limited number of posts that meet specific criteria rather than pulling from all posts of a given type. While you can apply custom queries later, once you've integrated listings into a grid, map or other layout, using queries upfront when creating the listing can be especially helpful when working with large databases to simplify the process and lighten the load from the start. There are many ways to use queries with Crocoblock products, and you can check out a comprehensive video on our channel that covers the topic in detail. If you select terms as the listing source, you'll be able to use data connected to taxonomies, which are used to categorize or tag content in WordPress. Choosing the user option allows you to display information related to users. The last option is for displaying repeater fields, which is distinct from other source types. This option is specifically used to display data from post repeater fields in listings. In addition to repeater field data, these listings can also display default information about the posts that contain repeater fields. However, they won't include dynamic information from custom meta fields. Similarly, listings based on other source types cannot display repeater fields data. If you're choosing a repeater field as the source, you'll then need to select the post type from which the repeater fields are coming. The available sources include JetEngine, ACF, if you're using that plugin on your site, or the JetEngine option page, which may contain global data or settings for the website. After that, you'll need to input the repeater field name or an option if you're using the JetEngine option page as the source. Keep in mind that the display of listings with repeater fields will only be available for posts from the selected post type. Let's proceed with building a listing for the custom post type events, which I've already created along with several posts. I assure you that the listing building process doesn't depend on the type of data source you select at the beginning, but rather on your specific preferences and final goals. The CPTs I've created contain data in various custom meta fields, such as a date in a date field, an image in a media field, a short description in a text area field, and a text field with the name of the platform containing venue reviews, a user rating, and a URL of the platform. For the rest of this tutorial, I'll show you how this data can be integrated into a listing and organized in the Bricks editor. Listings in WordPress combine static design elements with dynamic content, while the layout, background, borders, and other design aspects can be defined using standard Bricks elements like containers and blocks. There are specific dynamic elements which appear with the activation of the JetEngine for dynamic content from posts, which also have styling settings on their own. I will start building the listing using container and section elements for the layout, inserting all the information I want to include, and then proceed to style the elements and the listing as a whole afterwards. First, I will insert a dynamic image element. In the General Settings section, the first field allows me to input the source for the image with the custom field of media type among the default options. Next, I want to display content from the date field. For this, I will use a dynamic field element. In the General Settings for this element, I need to select the metadata type as the source and then locate and click the relevant meta field. Since the source is a date type field, we must decode the value in the field. To do this, I will activate the filter field output toggle, which is located near the bottom of the settings, and select the format date callback option. For this listing, I want to display the date over two lines, the months at the top and the day of the months at the bottom. To achieve this, I'll duplicate the current element. Under the activated filter field toggle in each element, I'll insert two different format strings. Information on how to use these date formatting options can be found in the link under the label Documentation on Date and Time Formatting. Now I'll add the event's title, which is also the post title, by using another dynamic field element. It offers the correct connection right away since the default source is post title. Next, let's insert another dynamic field element for the meta field containing the short description. Finally, I want to integrate user ratings, specify the platform where the ratings can be found, and link the platform's URL to the platform name. For this, I'll first insert a dynamic link element, as it allows choosing different sources for both the label and the URL. In the General Settings, I'll switch the default permalink source to the meta field containing the URL. Below that, in the label field, I'll use the dynamic tag button to insert the meta field with the platform's name. If you want to add extra text to the label besides the content from the meta field, you can simply type it right next to the shortcode in the label input field. Finally, to pull the user rating data, I'll use a dynamic field element again. If you want to customize the dynamic field output, there's a toggle for that near the bottom of the content settings. By the way, it would be smart to implement this user rating content using repeater fields if we wanted the flexibility to display a different number of platforms with ratings for different posts. In that case, we would incorporate the rating information into repeater fields within another listing. Yes, listings can contain other listings, a feature known as nested listings. However, that will be demonstrated in another video. For now, you can check out Crocoblock's video on creating nested listings based on post categories. That's all the content I wanted to display in the listing, but how does it look on the front end? Let's hit the save button and preview the listing. Right now the listing looks unattractive. The first thing to remember is that the appearance of the listing will vary depending on the settings of the listing grid or any other element where the listing is inserted. For example, in a listing grid with a 3-column layout, each listing will take up 1/3 or less of the grid's width. However, there are more styling changes I want to make. I want to embed the image into a rounded border, restyle the event date and display it along with the event title over the image, make the clickable element visually indicate that it connects users to the rating source. We can also modify the entire listing's background and add shadows. Back in the editor, the first thing I want to do is limit the size of the entire listing to approximately resemble how it will look in a grid with columns, making the editing process a little more intuitive. So I'll embed all the elements into a single container and set its width to 400 pixels. While we're at it, let's add padding so the content doesn't touch the edges of the listing, which are now the same as the edges of the container. We'll also add a background color, slightly round the corners and apply a subtle shadow. As for the image, let's give the container element that holds the image a rounded border and adjust the overflow setting to hidden in the layout settings. I also want to ensure that the images across different listings remain uniform, even if the aspect ratios of the images vary. To achieve this, I'll set the container height to 300 pixels and the image's minimum width to 600 pixels. This way, when the images stretch, their height will fully cover the container. Next on the list is the stylization of the date and positioning it higher. First, I'll modify the padding, typography, background and set the field content width to full width option for both dynamic fields displaying parts of the event date. Then I'll embed them in a div element, which will allow me to move them together to the desired position. I'll also add a border to unify both fields into one design element. For the event's title, I can adjust the element's vertical position in the layout margin settings, or I can simply hover over the element and drag its top and bottom margins for a more visual approach. I will also horizontally align the text to the center of its parent element, change the font size and weight, apply a white color background, and add a contrasting shadow for better readability. Finally, I'll group the two elements displaying the user rating information into a single container to put them in one line. I'll adjust the spacing between them and add some margin to the top of the container. Additionally, I'll change the font color of the content linked to the rating sources. Now we're almost ready to preview the results. I'll just add some margin to the top of the root container to give us a better view of the entire listing. What we see in preview mode is a listing template that uses the elements we've selected to create a design that will be displayed for every post listing. However, the content will vary for each post, depending on the specific details within each one. For the preview, WordPress pulls content from the most recently published post among those queried for this listing. This was a quick demonstration of how Bricks excels in visually editing listings, allowing you to see how they'll appear in your final design. Subscribe to our channel for more tutorials on using listings in grids with Bricks Editor. Drop your questions and reactions in the comments and hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Until next time, cheers!